So, Andy, you do realize you kind of opened Pandora's box with this episode, right?
What are you talking about?
You asked me and Paul to talk about comic books.
That was kind of a mistake, I guess. What the fuck kind of laugh is that?
It's just my fun laugh. What's wrong with it?
All right. So, Paul.
Andy?
Kevin.
Wow.
What do you think would be the best superpower to have? Keep in mind, you have full control over it, Kevin, and you can do everything that the power entails.
This is not one of those situations where you make a wish and it ends up being completely different from what you wanted it to be.
No, it's not one of those. And also, your power can't be to have more powers, Kevin.
I want the power where I can imitate any person's power. I'm just kidding.
Hey, that's actually not a bad power.
No, actually,
All right, Hope.
I want teleportation.
Teleportation.
I love the idea of teleportation, just being able to teleport from one location to another over great distances. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it'd be a tie between flight or teleportation. I mean, flight would just be awesome to go up as wherever I want and fly and just be above things for a while, away from everything. On the other hand, teleportation, because I don't have to worry about getting anywhere. Just, I'm there. There's no wait for it. There's just, you're there. You're done.
So I'm going to go Professor Xavier style.
Telekinesis, huh?
Telekinesis, baby. Because telekinesis, I got built-in flight. I can just telekinetic myself over to where I need to go. Really?
That's how Jean Grey flies.
Exactly, bitch.
Oh, wow.
So I got both of you suckers beat.
She used to encase herself in the telekinetic shield and lift herself. That's why she always had that aura.
Why wouldn't Xavier do that?
Because he's
a little crippled ass Jean-Luc Picard looking motherfucker. Hey everybody!
Hey guys!
Welcome back to another Power Trip Gaming Powercast.
Yes, that's right. The Powercast where you're listening with power.
Boom. So,
don't sue us, Nintendo.
Don't sue us. I'm starting right away with a tangent. All right. So, I just got done finishing editing Metal Mech, right? What a horse shit piece of game that really was.
I didn't like it.
It was terrible.
I didn't like it. No.
It was bad.
The first several levels of that game were not the greatest, but they weren't terrible.
They weren't great.
But the last level of that game was absolute horse shit.
It took the footage I had, the raw footage was 4 hours and 40 minutes.
Oh god.
Motherfuck.
It's 4 hours and 40 minutes of my life I can't get back.
And just having to watch through it again, it kind of brought back like a PTSD thing where all I'm thinking of is just how much I hated this game.
The controls of that last level were terrible.
It was bad. So watch Metal Mech, anybody on the YouTube channel. It's 6 parts. I tried to make it as watchable as possible.
If you want to see how we actually do suffer through games, that's a good example of it. Because there are games that we play that are really good and we like. There's games that are bad that we like. There's games that are good that we don't like, and there's games that are bad and we don't like.
Yes.
And this was definitely one that was bad and we didn't like.
It's easily one of the top 3 worst games we've played thus far, for me. Yeah. I absolutely detested it.
Yeah, I did not like this one.
No.
Yeah.
So that's what I had. Mm-hmm. So, as of this Powercast, I almost screwed that up. As I'm sure everybody knows, the icon, the legend of the comic book world, Stan Lee, has passed away. He was 90... How old?
95. 95. He hadn't made it to his 96th birthday. It would have been in December.
Yeah.
There we go.
So, yeah. November 12th, 2018.
Yes. So
Rest in peace, Stan Lee.
Absolutely. So it's only fitting that we do the episode about comic books.
Absolutely.
This, as Kevin mentioned at the beginning, is yours and his world.
Yes.
I personally never got into comic books, and I still don't. I don't find them as pleasurable, but I can still see the relevance of like what he brought to that medium, you know. So, I mean, let's jump into it. Like, what got you guys into comic books to begin with? Like, what was it that drew you into that world?
You know what? I'm not 100% sure what it was that originally got me into it, but I know that when I was a kid, I bought comic books, and truth be told, when I was a kid, I bought the comic books, but I never read them. I just kind of looked at them and just collected them, I guess. But it wasn't until I was older, about 10 years ago, that I really started like getting into comic books, and I would buy like one or two a month, and then it just kept on growing and growing, and now I'm a weekly reader, and I usually get on average between 10 and 15 comic books a week. So
Jesus Christ!
I know I've got an addiction.
You got a problem.
They're not exactly cheap either.
No, they're not anymore.
So
most comic books are $3.99, and Marvel is good at pricing their comic books at more than $3.99.
God damn.
Yeah, they'll have special editions that they range anywhere from $4.99 to just this past week. Uncanny X-Men was released. Uncanny X-Men #1. They relaunched it, and that was a whopping 80 pages at $7.99. So
80 pages.
80 pages.
That's a whopper.
The average comic book runs about 20 to 21 pages.
Yeah.
So.
My only experience with comic books is growing up. My parents owned a liquor store here in town, and we sold comics and other things like that. So I would sit on the little shelf and I would read like Sonic the Hedgehog or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and ones like those, but I never really got into like the DC, the Marvel, and ones like that. It was more of I looked for the ones of the games I was playing at the time. So like that was really my only real experience until I got older.
You know what's funny about that is that the newsstand is like pretty much basically dead for comic books. Like they don't sell them over the newsstand like that anymore.
No.
It's all direct market, like comic book stores.
The digital apps.
And digital apps now.
So,
yeah. So.
I'd say the only comic book series like running that I actually got really into was thanks to our friend Lane when we worked together, when he worked with us, was Blackest Night.
Blackest Night, yeah.
I got really into Blackest Night. I'd say if I had to have a character that I liked of like comics, it would be Green Lantern.
Green Lantern. Yeah.
I just loved the idea of the rings and like the different colors, like working on certain ones and not working on others, just based on like the light spectrum thing. It was really cool. It was such an interesting idea. So like I kind of got into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that was a really good crossover.
That was cool.
That ran through 2009, I believe, and into 2010, but oh my god, what a fantastic story that was.
It was a cool story,
Yeah.
and that was like, I'd say that's probably the only series I've really gotten into, other than, like, I know you bought me Starman Omnibus.
Yeah.
Omnibus. It's one of my favorite words. You got me that for Christmas one year, and I like that quite a bit. It was his weird little dildo rod that he swings around. It's just,
only you.
Only you. Oh my god.
it was just kind of cool, but that's about as far as I've ever gotten into it. So
I didn't see. To be honest, I don't even remember when. I just like in my mind, it's always been me reading comics. I mean, I know I'll get flack for this from some people, but I read everything from like Archie and like the old Sabrina comics to
now we're gonna give you flack.
Marvel. Well, because they used to like some of them used to come in the same issues. So.
Oh yeah, sure.
So like, and Marvel, DC, X-Men, like early Batman stuff early for us, not early for the character.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I used to read, it was just always there. When I used to go to like the library weekly, I would pick up stacks of comic books, and that's what I read instead of actually reading books. So, and because I read so many comics, I started reading more books and stuff. So
yeah, that's right too. I forgot that the libraries used to have comic books. Nowadays they only have like trade paperbacks and graphic novels.
Yeah, people go to libraries.
Yes, people still go to libraries.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I still go to libraries.
It's just weird to me. It's
well, you've probably never even set foot in a library, so you can't.
I used to go to the library.
School does not count.
No. My parents used to bring us to the library all the time, and I used to get the Garfield books. I used to love reading the Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes. I used to read those at the dinner table.
I like the little Mr. Men books. Do you remember those Mr. Men?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. I used to love the library.
Not to go on a tangent here.
Hey, do what you gotta do, buddy.
But just this past week, I met somebody who he pronounced library library.
Oh, come on.
He said it the first time, and I'm like,
What?
Wait a minute. He just said library.
He said library.
He just said library. And I'm like, okay, maybe it was just he misspoke. And then he said library again, and he said library, and I'm like, nope, didn't misspoke. didn't misspeak. He knew what he was saying. He knew how he was saying it.
God.
Library.
God bless people. But so what was it that like drew you into comic books? Like, was it the characters, the stories? Just what got you into it?
I think it really it was. If I have to say what galvanized me, it was actually there was a few writers of like. I remember this story that was written by Mark Waid, and it was published by IDW, which was one of the there's outside of Marvel and DC, IDW is one of the big like third party companies, but it was called The Unknown, and the power that they like the way that it was written, it was just so well written, and the way that it could project life, where it really has a sense of reality to it, and just power, and I'm kind of at a loss here, but it's like, it just, I never knew that comics could evoke that kind of emotion out of me, or could make me really think in that sense, like really challenge me to think, and ever since then, and then I read actually a story called Day Tripper. It was a 10-issue series that was published by Vertigo Comics, which was actually kind of a subsidiary of DC Comics. And that was actually, there was an issue of there that as I was reading it, like by the time I got to the end, I was actually crying. And I was like, holy shit, comics can make you feel this way? Like, I can't believe it.
Oh my god. So comics make you cry. Silent Hill 2 makes you cry.
That's it.
He's keeping a running list.
I'm keeping a list now of things that make him upset.
That's fine, because nothing else makes me cry.
We're going to take on something else.
Too much does.
Yeah,
come on now.
It makes me scared.
Come on now, boys.
So, but just because of how it could really kind of tell a powerful story through that medium, it really just kind of solidified my love of comics and what these stories could tell in such a short amount of time.
Okay.
I'd say, like, to me, like, early on, it was the fact that there really wasn't anything else like it for me. So, like, being able to look at the art and watching, like, you know, the mutants shooting off the different powers and doing that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, as I got older, the story aspect did become more important to me. But, yeah, it was the uniqueness of the art style and all that stuff that drew me in originally, so...
Yeah, where, like, well, that's basically where when Image started in 1992, that's what drew people in, was that you had all these superstar artists who had started their own company, and yeah, they could draw, well...
Except for Hands and Feet?
Yeah, some of them couldn't, but then when they actually started, like, writing and drawing their own stuff, you realize that all of them, like, well, with one or two exceptions, like, they couldn't write for crap.
Yeah.
Alright, so what would you say is, like, your favorite character, or, a favorite storyline, or what would you say is, like, your all-time favorite, like, thing you could go back to?
Go back to?
Or just whatever. What's your favorite thing? In the comic book world, motherfucker.
Oh, in the comic book world.
What the fuck do you think we're talking about? It's comic books!
It's comic book. We're talking about comic books.
We're talking about comic books!
So my favorite character in comic books is actually the Juggernaut. From the X-Men. I love the Juggernaut because, well, when he was first introduced, he was just this kind of, like, brooding powerhouse who was just hell-bent on destroying the X-Men and Charles Xavier. But as they had kind of developed the character, it's like you find out that he actually has, like, a really sad, like, childhood in this backstory that has a lot of layers to it. And
he's not just the Juggernaut, bitch.
No, he's not.
And the funny thing is, he's not really even entirely a villain.
No,
I mean, especially you look during the Onslaught run when the entire point of him trying to go to the X-Men was to try to get information that was locked in his head out to save everyone.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
and he was going to them for help.
Well, and actually, when Juggernaut started, he was a what is that called? Well, he was basically not a bounty hunter. It was like a soldier of fortune.
Yeah.
That's the word.
He was a mercenary.
He was a mercenary. He just basically did his work for the highest bidder, but so he wasn't technically a bad guy. And the reason why he wanted to stop or kill the X-Men and kill Charles Xavier is because Charles Xavier was his stepbrother. His own father, so Juggernaut is Cain Marko. His own father loved Charles more, who was his stepson, than he did his own son, and so he developed animosity towards him. And then Charles Xavier had kind of developed his powers and learned that he even had mental powers, and so he had actually saw the thoughts inside Cain Marko's head, and Cain knew that he was looking into his mind, and it developed this, like, because he saw some things that were like his deepest, darkest secrets, and so it developed this real big hate, like, you did that on purpose, I hate you, my father loves you more than he loves you more than he loves his own son, and it just developed this hatred for him. And throughout the whole thing, it's like Juggernaut just he really just wants a friend. He just wants somebody, and that's why in the early days he developed a really strong bond to a villain named Black Tom Cassidy. Yeah. And throughout the years he's kind of went on both sides of the spectrum, where he was a hero who joined the X-Men at one point. Now he's kind of back in that villain role, but he's always like he's the villain who really.
He's a tragic villain.
Yeah, he's a tragic villain, and I just absolutely love it.
Like a villain of circumstance, kind of.
And he was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and I believe it was 1965.
Wow. What about you, Kevin?
Number 12.
Who would you say is your favorite character?
Thor. He's always been my go-to.
Yeah?
Yeah. The early Thor, Doctor Strange, those were always the ones that I taught. Like, I went and, like, those were my preferred ones. I mean, you can go talk to Chris. Like, Thor has been, like seeing a good live-action Thor and not that crappy TV Hulk with the bad corn silk wig.
You mean the Bixby, the Bill Bixby one?
Yeah, did you not know Thor was on there?
I didn't realize that. Oh, that's right.
Was it the movie?
There was the movie. There was the TV movie that he was on.
Thor was in that.
That's right.
He looked awful.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and he was just one of those characters where he could do the earthly stuff with, like, the Avengers or fight alongside Spider-Man, X-Men, anything like that, but then when his stories ever needed it, because of who and what he is, he could fly out into anywhere in the cosmos and start battling stuff that all of these other characters can't even touch.
So how did you feel when Beta Ray Bill took over the mantle of Thor for a little bit, or when Thunderstrike came onto the scene? Do you remember Thunderstrike?
When
Eric Masterson.
But see, and then that's those issues got a little weird for me.
That was the 90s.
When they Thor became like, there was this whole thing where, like, it was Masterson was like the split personality where he was Thor, but he wasn't Thor.
No, he wasn't. He was Thunderstrike.
Well, no, but before he even became Thunderstrike.
Oh, he was actually Thor.
You gotta remember, early on, he was Thor, and
I didn't realize that.
After Thor got separated from him or something like that, that's when he got the cane and he got the cudgel to become Thunderstrike.
Yeah.
And then Beta Ray Bill got...
That was in the 80s.
Stormbreaker?
Yes, yeah.
He has Stormbreaker? I can't remember all the names for the hammers.
Beta Ray Bill sounds like an 80s thing.
It's like 1983.
He's a horse-headed guy.
Yeah, he looks messed up.
Didn't Thor become a woman?
Yes, Thor was a woman. Jane Foster.
Jane Foster took over as Thor.
That's now, right?
No,
it's back to
Thor Odin's son being Thor.
Okay.
I didn't say my only issue with the whole, like, Jane becoming Thor is Thor is not a title. God of Thunder is his title.
Like Green Lantern, kind of.
Yeah. But Thor Odin's son is his actual birth name.
Yeah.
The God of Thunder is his title.
Yep.
So it really shouldn't have been Jane Thor. It should have been
Jane Foster, Goddess of Thunder, God of Thunder.
Yeah, and that was my only issue with it. The rest of it, the writing was good for the most part. I mean, other than like, every once in a while I'd go back to her being super sickly with cancer, and I'm like, just stay as Thor. And
well, it's really funny too, because back in the 70s, you remember the What If series?
Are we talking about Throg?
Thor, the Frog of Thunder.
Yeah.
No. That was actually in the Thor.
What?
That was actually in the, yeah, there's messed up stuff. But no,
That's
there
why I
was,
love Thor. It's so weird.
there was a series that was created in the 70s called What If, Marvel What If. And so it's like basically just kind of taking people's questions like, well, what if the first issue was what if Spider-Man had joined the Fantastic Four? And so that was like the story. Well, it's funny because when Jane Foster became Thor, people didn't realize that back in the 70s, What If number 10 was actually what if Jane Foster became the God of Thunder or was Thor.
Yeah.
And so that idea was something that was actually born in the 70s.
It's
and
probably even older than that.
Well, it might be, but it's, yeah. But people had often kind of questioned that.
The whole circumstance of how she even became Thor I thought was kind of cool. She came upon the hammer and she's like, well, there's always got to be a Thor. And that made her worthy of picking it up to defend people. I mean, that's like the entire reason she became Thor was when he was gone, it's just, well, someone needs to fill these shoes and do the right thing.
Well,
and then she becomes...
There's been other people who have picked up the hammer,
Oh, there's
too.
been a ton of people that have
Technically, during the whole Marvel versus DC, Wonder Woman was able to pick up the hammer, too.
Yeah,
But none of the amalgam comics are like, or the amalgam...
They're not
Yeah,
canon.
they're not,
Yeah.
none of those are considered canon.
Well, I guess that answers my question I was going to ask.
What's that?
It sounds like the way, like, whoever picks up, what is it, Mjolnir?
Yeah.
Is that the name
Mjolnir.
of the hammer? Whoever picks that up
Mjolnir.
becomes
Well, and see,
Thor, but I
the
guess
thing
that's
is-
not true, because didn't Hulk pick it up?
No,
Well, and-
Hulk tried to pick it up. He couldn't pick it up.
The
No?
one thing
What a
I've
puss.
the one thing I've never understood about it, okay, it's whoever shall be worthy can pick this hammer up and has the might, like the power of Thor. Well, some of the Thor's powers aren't based from the hammer, because like he's half Asgardian, half ancient god.
Yeah.
So like his super strength and his durability aren't from like magic and the hammer. They're
Well,
just
his-
what he is.
Like his lightning powers, too. That's not from the hammer either. That's
No,
just
like
from being the
his
God of
flight,
Thunder.
his weather control, and some of the energy blasts are from his hammer.
Yeah.
Like everything else is just stuff he can do. So I never understood how like other people pick up the hammer and all of a sudden they have all of his abilities. I'm like,
It's the transition throughout the years, different writers.
yeah.
Actually,
Whatever needs the situation needs, I suppose.
One thing that really pissed me off in a comic recently, it was an issue of Deadpool.
Oh, good. This is going to transition into what my next thing was.
Oh, there you go.
Was what do you like? What's something in comics that you like didn't like, or one thing you wish would have changed or didn't change, or whatever?
Well, it's because these wonderful characters that were created back in the 60s, a lot of them were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
And they were all created between like 61 and 72. Like almost the entirety of Marvel was.
Well, the current Marvel universe, yes, a lot of it was created then.
There's like an 11-year span where all the characters people know today were basically created.
Yeah, but
Holy
as
shit.
you create these characters, obviously different writers take over the helm, flesh out their story more and more, and as you get more writers kind of fleshing out these characters, some of them may not look back at what has been done or what powers they have or how their origin story is created.
This is how continuity and retcons start happening.
Exactly. And so this issue of Deadpool that just absolutely pissed me off was it was written by a writer named Jerry Duggan, who I think he just didn't know what Juggernaut's power set was. And so basically Juggernaut so he's not a mutant. He is actually endowed with power from the Gem of Sidorak. So his powers are mystical in nature because they're granted to him by Sidorak. And while he is in his Juggernaut form, he doesn't need to eat. He doesn't have to breathe. He has super healing, like a super healing factor where where he can get injured, but he won't get injured. He'll heal.
Well,
rapidly.
that's even if you can manage to injure him, it basically goes away.
It goes away instantly, yeah. And so he doesn't have to breathe in this. And so there was a part in this Deadpool series where so Deadpool's trying to kill himself, and so he actually he puts out a hit on himself for $20 million, and so of course Juggernaut is the first one who shows up. And so he is driving a truck, Deadpool is driving a truck and pins Juggernaut in between the truck and like a wall. and Juggernaut's still trying to get to him. He's like, this isn't going to stop me. And he's like, Deadpool says, yeah, but you know what? You still have to breathe. And he takes a hose of cement, and he covers Juggernaut, and you can see in the wording that it's like his arms are kind of flailing, and then all of a sudden his body goes limp. And I'm just like, he doesn't have to breathe. That's not going to stop him. And literally, that was it. That was the only.
He covered him in cement.
He covered him in cement. Never went back to him. So we assume that Juggernaut was stopped by this cement. And it's just, that's not how the character works. He doesn't have to breathe, so therefore he's not going to be stopped by cement, and it's not going to dry that fast that it's going to encase him like that. So it's like, do your research. Do your research.
What about you?
And this is going to be another thing that's going to be unpopular with some people, but back when they did like the main Clone Saga for Spider-Man, I had honestly wished that they would have stuck with Ben Reilly being the original and letting Parker die.
I don't think you would be as outcast as you think you would.
I know the character of Ben Reilly is highly loved, but everyone always wanted Parker to come. Well, I can't say everyone, but a good vocal chunk of the fan base wanted Parker to come back and be Spider-Man, be the real Spider-Man. But I think Ben was like, because he was so tragic that like he didn't know Aunt May or Uncle Ben.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get to lead the life that Parker got to lead. Someone else stole his entire life from him. And then when he started finding out that he had the spider abilities and stuff too, and he started getting on the scene, it's like, well, you stole this guy's entire life, even though you didn't actually do it. Someone else did it. It just made him a much better character for development than Parker ever was.
Well, and what they did with the whole Clone Saga is people can speak ill all they want of it. When it first...
I mean, there was poor writing in it. I will fully admit that.
And what happened is they confused themselves. The writers and everybody confused themselves with it, is that when it first started, for the first 6 months, whatever, like, the sales were awesome. Like, they hit everything that they could, and it was very well received. And they always... I think they had intended for Ben Reilly to be...
That was the original intent.
To be Spider-Man, but they always had some kind of... I think the editor-in-chief at the time was Tom DeFalco, and he said he wanted to have
a way of getting Parker back in, a
backdoor to get Parker back in should anything go badly, whatever it was. But then... they started to go back and forth where Ben Reilly was the real Spider-Man, and then it's nope, Ben Reilly's the clone and Parker is the real.
That's where like some of the bad.
And then it just kept kept going back and forth, and then at that point the writers didn't even know like who's the real one, who's the fake one. Like we don't even know.
They wrote themselves into a corner.
They really did.
Like, well, now what the fuck?
Yeah, they really did.
It's almost like Death Note syndrome.
Yeah.
If anyone watches anime of any sorts, Death Note is just like that, where all of a sudden things happen and you're like, oh no, I prepared for this, and it's no, I prepared for this too.
Oh,
and you're like,
it's the whole Yu-Gi-Oh syndrome. I need this one card. I got this.
I got
it. And like I said, Riley was the better character, and like for a while, like when he started, he was did the Scarlet Spider stuff, and then when he took over as Spider-Man, and then he was kind of like messed up, and then he bonded with Carnage.
Oh,
the whole Spider Carnage thing was awesome.
Yeah, that
was such a good run.
I have two parts. I have two parts of that. I'm missing the last two, but it was the Web of Carnage storyline.
I say not only was the suit really cool looking with Carnage on it, but like. That's
such a great cover.
Just the way Carnage was affecting his view of everything, it was really well really good concepts, some poor writing, but Spider-Man's been afflicted with that a lot over the years.
Yeah. If you want to see the Ben Reilly infected by the Carnage symbiote, look up Amazing Spider-Man 410. Look up the cover of that one. That's the one where Ben Reilly was bonded with the Carnage symbiote. It was really an awesome cover.
Well, I think that's where I start to fall off with comics. It's that idea that nothing is permanent. I understand it's different story arcs and it's different universes and all this stuff, but it's like any decision holy shit, that looks awesome. Sorry, Kevin just showed us the Spider-Man Carnage thing. That's fucking awesome looking. But it's like they kill off characters, and it's like they never stick by that decision. Like when Captain America died, they should have just left his ass dead. Like, I understand it's money, and I understand it's, alright, different storyline here. Well, he's back in this one. It's like nothing is finite. And I think that kind of bothers me a bit. It's like, I want decisions to be permanent.
Look what happened with Wolverine. Oh, we killed him off.
Jesus fucking Christ.
He's back. And not only is he back, but he has fire claws. And
Wolverine, to me, is by far my most hated superhero.
Batman.
I cannot stand Wolverine because he's damn near indestructible. It's like he's died, he's come back. He's dead, he comes back. Yeah, he's old now, and all of a sudden he's young again. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, just kill this guy already.
Yeah.
Well, the old one's from
Stick with X-23. Like, just pass the torch already. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like that's what comics need to do for me to get into it. Is that's why I liked Green Lantern, because there's not just one lantern. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it's the whole idea of the mantle. It's not Thor, where Thor's his name. It's like Thor's a title, and I liked that with Green Lantern, where there was many different ones. So it's like
3,600 and what? There's 3,600 and what lanterns?
Oh, I have no idea.
Because there's the 3,600 sectors, and then there's the Centurions, and then like the Guardians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I liked the idea that they were all unique. Like, just in the fact that they created different things with the rings. Mm-hmm. Like, one guy created, what was it, a lot of, like, inanimate objects. One guy created animals
or something. Willpower, yeah.
Well, like Kyle Rayner made the more intricate-looking constructs because he was an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas John Stewart and... Why am I blanking on the other one?
Guy Gardner.
No, well, we don't.
Oh, Hal Jordan.
Hal
Jordan.
Like they made the simpler. Okay, I'm making the boxing glove to punch you.
Here's a hammer.
Yeah. No,
but I thought that idea was really cool. It's like, yeah, he's Green Lantern, but he's unique in his own right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that doesn't happen so much in the vast majority of comics, and I think that's why I've never been able to get into them.
Well. And it kind of leads to the catch-22 where you want to draw in new readers, but by drawing in the new readers, you almost risk alienating your older fans. Is that they have done that before, where they have left characters dead, or they've introduced new characters that people do like, but then after a while they're like, you know what? I really miss the old Captain America, or I really miss the old Iron Man.
Well, and see, that's where I liked when Marvel originally started doing it and jumping to the different timelines. So we'd have AOA, we'd have like the different numbered universes, and then 616 is the main one.
The main universe, yeah.
I liked that entire concept. I mean, even DC does it with Earth 1, Earth 2, and stuff like that.
Well, now they have their own multiverse too.
Yeah.
Ever since the Dark Knight's Metal.
Yeah. Well, no, even before then, Flashpoint created a whole bunch of them too.
Oh, that's right. Flashpoint did a little bit of that too. But yeah, they really kind of spelled it out in the Dark Knight's Metal.
Yeah.
That's why it was kind of cool. I know you hate Batman, obviously, you just said.
Well,
but, like, even the idea of
it's not so much that I hate Batman, but to me, there is a point at which, like, comics are right, yeah, they're non-believable to at a certain point already off their face value, but there's a certain point at which I don't care how talented you are, how physically well-trained you are, Batman should not beat like 90% of the people he does.
He has no power.
Superman!
He has no
you
power.
You could be the best trained jiu-jitsu fighter in the world, but if you go up and try to like do a hold or something on Killer Croc, a guy who has super strength, he's just going to go, "What the hell are you doing?" and fling your ass.
Yeah. And that I agree with you completely. That's enough. Like Batman, I can't stand either because
he's powers. He's just rich.
I got the power of money.
I mean, at least even with Iron Man, it's okay. I've got these powers while I'm in the suit.
But
my suit gets busted. I'm screwed and just an alcoholic.
But he's also smart though. He is actually one of the top tier like intelligent.
Yeah.
Like
that's why he developed the Hulkbuster armor to actually take on Hulk.
He's got armors for like.
He's got armors for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, which that's kind of cool. I do like that. But yeah.
But anyways, like I was saying though, is that they do take over the mantle and they do a lot of kind of passing the torch on. So like in the case of Iron Man, he was kind of taken over by a character named Riri Williams, who was
so poorly written,
an African American college student. You had Wolverine, who was then kind of killed off, and then X-23 ended up becoming the new Wolverine.
There was two. His son also became
Oh
Wolverine.
yes, and his son was introduced into the main 616 universe as well too, because he was in the
Dakin,
Ultimates.
Daken, whatever.
Oh no, well Dakin is somebody completely different.
But you gotta remember, he took over as Wolverine for Norman Osborn's
He did, but that was in
Secret
the Dark
Avengers.
That was in the
whatever.
Dark Avengers.
Yeah.
Dark Avengers.
Who did he
yeah.
mate with?
Some Japanese
I
lady,
can't.
a couple hundred
might
years
have
ago.
been Mirko or something. I'm gonna nut in your vagina, bub.
God, I can't imagine.
The Incredible Hulk. So Bruce Banner, people are familiar with him. He was replaced for a while by
Amadeus Cho.
Amadeus Cho, who is the totally awesome Hulk.
What?
Yeah, I know. And some of these things.
It was with that one. It was really weird because majority of the time when Banner transforms into Hulk, Hulk is a completely separate personality.
Right.
It doesn't have Banner's intelligence. Well, Amadeus stayed Amadeus and had all of his brains, and he was, I don't remember what they called his ability, but he had the ability to spatially visualize something and throw a rock at one thing and then cause a whole series of effects to happen. Well, he still had that, and then he had the Hulk strength on top of it.
So kind of like Future Sight in a weird way. He causes one thing that causes a chain reaction.
But they would show him doing calculations in space and stuff like that, and they'd show the physics of all the stuff. But
Jesus
he didn't
Christ.
lose his powers. Thunderbolt Ross, when he became Red Hulk, didn't lose his personality.
Red Hulk?
He became angry, but he didn't lose his personality.
So
What's the cousin that became She-Hulk? I can never remember her name.
Jessica Walters.
Yeah, when she became She-Hulk, she didn't lose her personality.
So
why
Bruce
is it
Banner
that,
was kind of a bitch.
So why is it that Bruce lost it, with the exception of when he's either Maestro or Grey Hulk, Mr. Fix-It?
Yeah. But Miss Marvel was it's Kamala Khan now. It used to be Carol Danvers, and then she became Captain Marvel. So I mean, they've taken all these different characters, and they have kind of evolved them. Captain America, for a while, it was actually the Falcon. It was Sam Wilson who was Captain America.
Punisher was also Captain America at one point.
Jesus Christ.
In which
I'll have to
when?
double check the issues. It might have been one of the side ones.
Because I know that a new character that they've just introduced that has kind of taken a lot of liking is Cosmic Ghost Rider, who is actually Frank Castle in the future. He is now what is it? He's like not Avatar. He's a thrall of of Thanos, basically.
Yeah.
And so he, but yeah, they've done this before, where they will introduce these new characters in these new classic roles, and so people do take a liking to him. But then after a while, it's like, hey, you know what? I kind of miss Wolverine.
Being
I
Wolverine.
miss Logan as Wolverine. I miss Iron Man. I miss why am I blanking on his name?
Who?
Iron Man.
Iron Man?
What's his
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark, for God's sakes, what the hell is wrong with me? I miss Tony Stark as Iron Man, so it's like they'll then bring Tony Stark back as Iron Man, and so it just kind of perpetuates that cycle where it's,
I suppose so.
where you do want there to be some kind of finality to a character, because then it'll strengthen the appearance of that character, because once you're dead, it's you're dead and you can't come back, and so it'll make things a little bit more, I don't know, it'll drive a lot more emotions. You don't want them to die because you know they won't come back, but at that same point it's no, people kind of come to expect that they'll
Shit
find a
image
way
of
back.
it, but it was from a What If line.
Oh, gotcha. So it's not real.
But I mean, there's tons of people that have taken over the mantle.
Oh, sure.
But that's what annoys me. It's even though they create other mantles or other people for that mantle, they still go back to the original.
They do.
So it's like I said, nothing's permanent. No matter how many offshoots of it that happen, you're still going to go back to Tony Stark as Iron Man. You're still going to go back to Logan as Wolverine. You're still going to go back to whoever the fuck Captain America is. I don't even know who that is.
Steve Rogers.
I mean,
I think my favorite person that took up the mantle for Captain America was Bucky.
Oh, yeah.
Bucky O'Hare.
Bucky
Yes,
Barnes.
Bucky, yeah,
Like
Bucky
Captain
Barnes.
America was killed on the steps of the
Yeah,
courthouse or
yeah,
whatever,
that
and
was-
then Bucky became Captain America for a while.
Yeah,
and
if
that
I'm
was
not
a
mistaken,
really good line.
that was that was like 25, number 25 or something like that. It's that iconic where it was during the whole Civil War crossover.
That's what Bucky's armor looked like as Captain.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was during the whole Civil War storyline where the cover is Captain America's hand with a handcuff around it, and there's blood on the glove because he was shot.
Who was the one you remember in MVC3 when they had the alternate costume for Captain America where it was instead of the round shield it was the kite shield? Who was that?
That's one of his World War II costumes, I think.
Was it?
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
Okay, I actually really like the design for that one. That one looked really Stars and Stripes.
That's funny.
All right, so what would you say is the biggest differences between Marvel and DC, if any? I mean, I wouldn't know, but can you really think of any real main differences between the two?
Early on, Marvel was we're basing all of our characters in science and the atomic age. It was this person who got their power from the radioactive spider, gamma rays, the mutant genes spawning. Marvel was very science-based in the early stuff.
They were
whereas
also-
DC was the more fantastical.
Yes, Marvel was also, especially when Stan Lee came around too. Their powers and the characters were based in like real life situations instead of these grandiose Superman. He's from a different planet.
I can do everything.
Yeah, they wanted them to be real people and relatable.
So like when he created Spider-Man, he's not just this guy with superpowers. Like he's a teenager who lost his uncle, who also is a struggling college student who doesn't know how he's going to afford a present for his Aunt May for her birthday. And it's like, and he's worried about these real world things where it's like, well,
I gotta kill Doc Ock.
I'm worried about this super villain who's
Batman.
going to destroy it.
He never has to worry about anything.
Nothing.
He's rich.
Superman doesn't have to worry about anything.
His parents died when he was young. He had Alfred there, and he had all the money in the fucking world. He could do whatever he wanted from the get-go.
And he also didn't kill.
What does he do? Early on, he did.
Did he early on?
He also
used a gun. Yeah, he also used a gun.
I thought one of the not when Bruce Wayne was Batman, but one of the other ones. They actually killed.
Azrael.
Oh, Thomas Wayne did too.
No, Thomas Wayne during Flashpoint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But Azrael took it too far, and that's why Bruce came back and beat the hell out of him.
Okay.
But,
fucking Bruce.
But yeah, that was during Nightfall when Bane broke Bruce's back.
Yeah, he broke the Batman.
Batman. Yeah, okay, yeah, his parents died. That fucking sucks. What did he do? Instead of actually helping the world and doing good, he obsessed on his parents' death and then became obsessed with bats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid of bats, but I'm going to be a bat.
It's like...
He wanted to instill the fear that he felt in other people who were doing bad.
Got it.
Well, and where is that? Like, Marvel is just like... I happened to be walking through a science fair. Their radioactive spider bit me. Now I have powers.
Or like in the case of like Bruce Banner and the Hulk, they were doing some gamma radiation testing. Rick Jones.
There we go.
Yeah, he saved this guy, but he ended up getting bombarded by the gamma radiation, and so then it caused him to become the Incredible Hulk. Or like in the case of the Fantastic Four, they were doing a space thing, and then they got bombarded by some kind of gamma ray. Yeah, they got bombarded by gamma rays, and then when they came back to Earth, they found out that they were having these different these powers and stuff, the reactions to whatever the gamma.
They were kind of a generic 4 elements thing early, because if you look at it, Sue is wind.
Mm-hmm.
Grim is earth, Johnny's fire, then because Fantastic can stretch, he's water.
Oh yeah, I never even thought about it
They're
that
just
way.
the 4 elements.
That's kind of clever.
Yeah, that's clever.
Yeah, that's what they represented originally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, Justice League versus the Avengers, who wins?
Depends on which iteration of both we're talking about.
God damn it!
If we're talking the originals, I mean, honestly,
it would come down to literally Superman versus Thor.
Of course. Superman versus everybody.
So from a realistic standpoint, I honestly would say the Justice League would win just because of the fact that the Avengers were literally Marvel's answer to the Justice League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about like the characters who are part of the Justice League, so you've got like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and then you take the characters from the Avengers, the original team. You've got Hulk. Wait, was Hulk part of the?
I think he was wasn't he the second team?
He may have been the second team, but you had Iron Man, you had Thor, you had Captain America. I believe. What? No. Shoot! I don't even remember who the other characters.
Yeah,
were.
I don't remember.
I think Hulk may have
first...
been. I think Hulk may have been one of the original Avengers too.
Okay, so the original was Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Pym, and
Hank Pym.
The fuck is a Pym?
Hank Pym, Ant-Man.
Ant-Man.
Oh,
yeah, Hank Pym. If it would come down to it,
was
I almost
Aquaman
feel...
part of Justice League, or was that a different one?
He's later.
I think he was. I think he may have been. Yeah, he may have been in that initial team too. But honestly, I sort of feel like probably the Justice League would have beat the Avengers, the original team.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer Marvel or DC?
I prefer Marvel.
So
I don't know.
The original Justice League was Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, and Wonder Woman.
Yeah, so Justice League would have destroyed the original Avengers.
Yeah, they would.
Absolutely.
It basically, like I said, it would come down to Thor versus Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with like the early
Yeah.
ones, with how powerful Thor and Superman were back then. It'd be them two brawling and then Superman eventually winning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Superman always felt like that kid on the playground where no matter what you did, you couldn't
You
touch
got this
him.
power? Well, I got this other power.
I got a shield that can block heat rays! Well, fine, then I'm gonna cool you off with some fucking snow. Well, guess what? I got impervious snow pants! You're like, come on, man. I always hated that kid.
So here's the thing. In response to your question, like, so what do I prefer, Marvel or DC? I always seem to tend to lean and gravitate towards Marvel. I do like the characters in Marvel, and obviously my favorite comic book character of all time is Juggernaut.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the ability to write like crossover issues and crossover events, DC is my go-to.
With the exception of a few here and there.
With the exception of a few here and there, because
like
obviously
Flashpoint was amazing. This whole Rebirth thing for me has been eh.
Yeah.
The
Dark Knight's Metal.
Dark Knight Metal. It sucked to me.
Oh,
To me, it was just a retreading of Fear itself from Marvel.
See, I loved.
Well, because
Dark Knight's Metal.
if you look at Fear itself, everyone got fucking Uru. Everyone and their mother had Uru-based weapons and stuff like that. Fear itself,
Fucking Uru.
and then it jumped over to this metal one, and like all of a sudden everyone has nth metal shit.
Yeah, but it was more so like.
I mean, granted, the Batman Who Laughs is amazing.
Yes, and he's going to get his own spin-off series in December.
Although, there's a bunch of things DC still needs to answer anyways. Who are all three of the Jokers?
What do you mean, the three Jokers?
You remember when Batman had the Mobius chair?
Oh, yeah.
It turned out the Joker's not one individual,
Oh, yeah,
but
it's three individuals.
And they
That's right,
have done nothing with it since then.
Well, not yet.
Which would make sense, considering there's multiple Batmans. Why wouldn't there be multiple Jokers?
But how is Batman, who is the smartest, the best detective in the world, never able to figure out he's fighting three completely different people?
Because he's fucking Batman and he pays someone else to do it for him.
But, no, to be quite honest, though, I mean, I've been disappointed by a lot of Marvel crossovers.
Yes.
And I've been disappointed with a lot less DC crossovers.
And my big thing is Marvel, especially lately. We got Secret Wars 2. We got they're redoing literally all of their like Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet has been done 3-4 times now.
Yeah, they're doing Infinity Wars now.
They did Secret Invasion twice now.
Mm-hmm.
Civil War has been done twice now. And that's Marvel's big thing is.
And their big thing is tie-ins. All of their stuff is tie-ins, and and some of them just really have no bearing whatsoever to the story, to the overarching story. And it feels like DC just really gets, like, they get it. They do their main story, and then their tie-ins really do have a lot of bearing on the events that are going into the main story. And so I think that DC is better when it comes to the writing, the cross-writing. But Marvel, I don't know. I prefer some of
To be honest,
stories.
Marvel I think has the more iconic characters than DC.
I think
outside of Justice League,
I think they do.
You can ask most people who DC characters are; they're not going to know shit.
Nope.
You go to Marvel, people are going to know the X-Men. They're going to know the Avengers. They're going to know
Fantastic
Fantastic Four, Guardians of the Galaxy now. DC does not
it's-
have that.
It's so funny too because the Guardians of the Galaxy was like a literally like
they're
a
D
B.
tier.
They were like
yeah.
a B tier, not even B tier. They were like
were D tier.
C or D tier. And now all of a sudden, because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Guardians of the Galaxy movie
well, I
1
can't
and
say they're
2,
household
it's like
names, but
I would venture to say that they are household names.
least,
People
well,
know who
Groot
the
are.
yeah
Groot is.
people know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are now, which is just crazy.
Well, this team, 'cause this is team
It's
2 technically.
It's the 2008 team.
Yeah.
Yes, because the original Guardians of the Galaxy were a completely different team. Rocket Raccoon was not in there. Groot
Yeah.
was not in there.
None of them were.
None of them actually were. Yeah.
That's probably due in part to the fact that Marvel, as far as the movies go, has always done extremely well.
But-
DC movies are usually not.
But
great.
see, this is the thing: the live-action DC movies are garbage.
That's what I'm talking about.
The animated movies
Yes.
are fantastic.
Which is weird because like the
yeah.
cartoons and stuff always seem to do extremely well for
Yeah.
DC.
Yeah.
Live action movies.
Well, I've often thought that it's like with their TV series and their animated movies, DC's got the market hands down.
Yeah.
Like people love Arrow, people
Flash, Supergirl.
Supergirl. They Gotham.
Black Lightning now.
Yeah, Black Lightning. They've been doing some great stuff with the TV shows. People love them. They're eating them up. But movies, they can't do movies for shit for some reason.
No.
And Marvel, they are. I don't. Even though their TV series are well liked, I don't think that they're getting quite the numbers that DC gets.
I
But their movies
will
are
say,
just-
with the exception of maybe Daredevil and then Luke Cage on Netflix,
yeah, Luke Cage.
because those were when they first aired, they were huge, and then obviously they've dropped
Yeah.
off since then.
Yeah,
so that's
maybe
part of-
Daredevil, but Luke Cage, I don't think that was ever like super well liked.
Didn't they cancel Luke Cage?
They did.
Canceled, like all of them.
No, they canceled Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
Iron Fist, yeah.
But there's speculation that because
Defenders.
it's no.
Oh
It has-
wait, Heroes for Hire.
Heroes
right?
for Hire.
Yeah.
Because Danny Rand and Luke Cage, they have, like, in the comics in the 70s, they formed a team called the Heroes for Hire, basically.
okay.
And so they think that that's what's going on now. Is that they're canceling those two shows because they're going to make a Heroes for Hire.
Although I will say DC TV wise has made two huge mistakes. One, getting rid of the Constantine show was just the biggest mistake they've done thus far.
Well, it's funny because now with the animated movies, they're going to Justice League Dark.
Well, they've already
So
done
it's-
Dark. They did Justice League Dark,
And they're doing a live action
and then
movie too, aren't they?
Constantine just also had City of Hell or something like that.
Yeah,
come out.
they're doing a live action Justice League Dark, aren't
Yeah,
they? Yeah.
I think so. There was maybe not with how bad Justice League did. They may not. They might change because
Oh,
from what I
maybe.
understand, DC is like revamping all their movie plans.
What a shock.
Yeah.
So, but I kind of agree with Paul. Like, yeah, their crossover stuff is better. I mean, yeah, Justice League Dark is probably one of my favorite like team things for DC. But
It's like the mystical side of
as far as
Justice League.
as far as like DC goes, like Constantine is like the one I go to for reading because it was just Neil Gaiman and all the guys that did all the stuff that intertwined with it between Lucifer and all those, and they were just amazingly well written. And Marvel doesn't really have much that could touch those
If
ones.
I'm not mistaken, wasn't Constantine? He was created by Alan Moore, though.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
'cause
like
he was in the pages of Swamp Thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yeah, with like Sandman and all the stuff that all the DC has done, that mystic and yet not mystic stuff.
Mhm.
Like they've got a bit of an edge on Marvel with that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So would you guys consider graphic novels the same as comic books?
They're
Like,
just
Oh yeah, it's a collection of comics.
The only
basically.
thing that like graphic
Yeah.
novels are, they're just longer comics usually,
yeah.
or a collection of
or it's a
multiple-
collection of like a
multiple-
storyline or something
Yeah.
like that, and it's just marketed. They call it a graphic novel, but
And that's usually, like I said, only due to size.
yeah, and some of them actually are created like they're specific, like it's a new story that was created, and it's just called a graphic novel because it really is kind of a novel with chapters, but it's got pictures in there too. So, I mean, I definitely would consider them the same thing.
Yeah.
They're definitely not different. People consider Watchmen is the greatest graphic novel of all time. I mean, regardless of if you think it is or not, people call it the greatest graphic novel of all time. Well, The Watchmen was actually a series of it was a maxi series, they call it, where it was 12 issues. It was a 12-issue limited series.
Oh.
And so they basically collected it into one big collection and then marketed it as a graphic novel.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically 12 chapters told over all these pages and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely the same thing.
Okay, because I have the Scott Pilgrim versus the World graphic novels.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I really like those.
Yeah.
So
and Scott Pilgrim was the same way, where I think each that whole series was either 12, 18 issues or whatever it was, but then it was collected over the course of like several books and stuff, and then marketed as graphic novels.
Damn, there's another one I had too that was really good.
Battle Pope.
Battle Pope. I did have that.
Yes, you did.
There was another one.
As Robert
Damn it! Why
Kirkman.
can't I remember the name of it? I'll have to look on my shelf and see what the names of the series is. I only have the first two. I don't know if there's any more. I picked them up when we went to that comic book store in Brookfield. Is that Brookfield or Greenfield? or somewhere
yeah,
around there?
Greenfield. It's what is that place called? Lost Worlds of Wonder.
Yeah,
I like that place.
I don't remember the name of it, but that's besides the point. Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to Stan Lee, the hero of the comic book industry. The fuck do you know about the man?
So Stan Lee is definitely an inspiration, and I know that there was contention just because of the fact that people think that it's like he was trying to take ownership over a lot of these things without the proper credit to Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, things of that nature. But I mean, Stan Lee was a talented man with an imagination that will really be just unmatched, in my opinion.
That's funny. Me and Kevin, before you got here today, we're actually talking about that. Someone sent me an article or like a big thing about because I didn't know there was a big feud's not the right word between Kirby and Stan Lee about who actually created a lot of the things. And the way the article sounded was that Stan Lee created Marvel Comics, the industry, and Jack Kirby created Marvel Comics, the actual books. So that's the way. So it seemed like Stan Lee handled more of the business aspect, and Jack Kirby created the characters, the stories, the books, the art. And Stan Lee was more of like the business sense.
So what ended up happening was that Marvel they were already a comic book company, and Stan Lee started off in like a menial position. He worked his way up to editor, and then
They weren't Marvel, remember? They were Timely.
They were
originally.
Timely, but I'm pretty sure that before Stan Lee did what he did, it really was Marvel Comics.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just
trying
that
to-
he created what people know as Marvel Comics today.
Okay.
And so what ended up happening was he wanted to write a story that Marvel would not let him write, and so he literally was so disenfranchised, disenchanted with the whole comic book industry that he basically. His wife at the time, Joan Lee, who I'm so glad that those two are back together again in heaven. Rest in peace. But anyways, I'm sorry. He you could tell that his downcline when she passed away last July. It's his mind's
the precipitous drop.
yeah, really,
That
it was. But she said, you know what? You're already willing to just quit Marvel. Like, why don't you just write this one story that you want to write? Because what's the worst that they could do? They'll fire you.
Yeah.
You want to leave anyways.
Yeah, Timely became Marvel in the 1960s.
Oh, okay. So I guess So it became Marvel then when Stan Lee really kind of started making
they were
his
found.
mark.
Timely was founded in 1939 and went
39.
defunct in 1950.
Oh, okay,
And then it
gotcha.
became by
Oh.
1960 it became Marvel Comics.
So then what happened between the 1950 and 1960?
I don't know. I'm kind of
Because I think it was Marvel at that point. It's just that they weren't known for what they were until the 60s. So Stan Lee ended up writing the story that he wanted to, which was
what?
Amazing Fantasy number 15, which was the first appearance of Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
And because it was so well received, they said, Stan, do your magic.
You nailed it.
Create something else. He created the Fantastic Four then at that point, which was I think the comics' first family like superhero team. And so then he created the Fantastic Four, and then after that, it's like it just one hit after the next. He created the X-Men, he created Black Panther, he did the Incredible Hulk, Ant-Man, all these different characters, Thor, and what ended up happening is that he would write basically a plot outline of a story, and would say, I want, like, this is what I have planned out for this story. Draw me some pages of what you think these characters look like and what the action is trying to do.
Yeah.
And so then the artist would actually draw out the pages, the panels, and all that stuff. And then what he would do is then he would put words onto those panels, and then that would be the story. And then they ended up calling it, like, I think the Marvel method is what they ended up calling it. And so, honestly, people can say what they want about, was it Stan Lee or Jack Kirby? Or was it Stan Lee and Steve Ditko who created Spider-Man? Or was it Jack Kirby who created the Fantastic Four? Or was it Stan Lee? It was
A collaboration.
It was a collaboration. You can't have one without the other, because you have the characters are designed by the artist, but you give them the personality, and the everything else is through the writing.
Yeah.
Because you can't convey everything through just the drawing. You can show emotions, you can show their physique, you can show their demeanor, but you can't show what their personality is.
Yeah.
That's through the words. And so regardless of who Stan Lee worked with, I think that there was a collaboration between the artist and him.
Okay.
So when they say that Daredevil was created by Stan Lee and Bill Everett, it was created by not just Stan Lee, but Bill Everett as well too. Was Thor created by Stan Lee or Jack Kirby? It was both.
Okay. So one of the things that stuck out in that article was, as you talked about Black Panther.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things they talked about is Jack Kirby he wanted to call it Coal Tiger or something like that. He had a half mask, all this other stuff, and Stan Lee's like, no, he needs a full mask. He needs to be completely covered, because at that time, it was something about African American characters and how they weren't really dominant in that particular era.
Weren't.
So like they
weren't.
So the way he envisioned it was the fact that keep his face completely covered. Sure, show him taking off his mask at the end of the book. By then they will have already enjoyed the story. They will have already bought the book. They would already have enjoyed it. So the fact that he's a black guy is inconsequential. You know, and that's what made me think of, he was more of the business sense than the actual creative process. So it kind of... the article seems skewed in some ways, that he wasn't so much a creator as a business.
That's one of the downfalls, especially with the early comic stuff. I mean, a great example is Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
People didn't know people didn't know for the longest time that Bill Finger had a large hand in creating
especially
Batman.
with like those companies back then. There was so much misdirection as to who's doing what and where, because early comics really wasn't seen as a career to strive to have. It was kind of the, you make comic books for a living.
In fact, in the early days, Stan Lee, he at parties and stuff like that, he didn't even want to, when people would ask him, well, what do you do?
I'm an artist.
No, he would say like, I'm a writer.
Yeah.
What do you write? Well, I write books. Oh, what kind of books do you write? Well, children's books. Well, what is there any that I would know? And I was like, well, I write comic books, and then people would kind of be like,
ugh.
Oh,
that's right.
You write comics?
Because didn't comic books go through a crash similar to like video games at one point?
Well, there was
like a comic book crash
later.
where it's like the market was lower.
That would happen. Actually,
that was in the 90s. That was in the 90s. No,
but there was one earlier. Prior to the boom with Marvel, there is where comics did the pulp magazine stuff. Did go down in sales.
Well, maybe they did because they had no direction at that point. But I think you're talking about the speculator bubble in the 90s.
Yes,
actually, yes.
That's.
Oh yeah. We can talk about that next, but I've got a lot of words on that. But yeah, no, I mean, Stan Lee, I think, honestly, between him and all the collaborators that he worked with, I mean, he is the reason why Marvel is what it is today and what people know of Marvel.
Yeah.
I mean, any superhero team that you talk about from the Marvel side of things, he had some hand in creating that.
Oh yeah.
Iron Man, the Hulk, the X-Men.
Well, basically anyone that's on the Avengers lineup or the X-Men lineup,
many,
or as Spider-Man related,
many.
he was with all of them.
I would say even if you're on the DC side, you still know who Stan Lee is.
Oh yeah,
like Stan Lee is essentially like directly relatable to comic books in general. He's like the father of comic books.
Yeah,
I would say he almost made the industry what it is.
What we'd consider modern comic books.
Yes, I think he did have a large hand in what the modern industry is actually. Because before that.
One of the big things a lot of people say is he's the father of modern mythology.
Yeah.
Which he created all of our current, what would in years' time would be our myths and our legends. He's a big hand in why we have them now.
Yeah. Yeah. And he is, I mean, he's the reason why it's like people can relate to superheroes and why we have these emotions that are tied into characters is because they weren't just these superhero, untouchable gods and aliens from another planet or whatever it was. It's like these were down-to-earth people like me and you who just happened to stumble upon or through some tragedy ended up being given these powers that just kind of made us the people who we were. And so it really spoke to people, and it really just kind of took the comic book industry to a level that it had never seen at that point. The 60s really were the golden age of comics.
And I would say he also paved the way for a lot of the early comic book code to start falling away.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Because like the early comic book code, that you didn't show like half the stuff they can get away with now, you wouldn't do back then.
Yeah, what do you mean?
So clothing styles, dialogue styles, the types of violence you saw on panel, drinking or drug references, non-existent in those early ones because you just did not do that.
Yeah. And in fact, it was actually a storyline where I think it was with it was Iron Man, where he basically I don't know if it was early enough if this was the one. I think it was like Demon in a Bottle is what the storyline was called. But basically it was Iron Man. Obviously Tony Stark had a drinking problem. He was an
alcoholic.
He was an alcoholic, and this one really spelled it out. And what they did was they basically printed that issue. Every
1979
comic was it? Yes.
Yeah.
Every comic had the comic book code, like it had to be approved by the comics code or whatever it was. And this one they said basically, because of what you're portraying in this comic, we can't approve this. And he's like, fine, we're going to publish this comic book, and we just won't have the stamp of approval.
So it was the Comics Code
The Comics Code Authority.
If it didn't have that symbol, they didn't get published by like major publishers.
And so they published it, and they basically just said, we're just not going to put the Comics Code.
They're basically the same thing as the motion picture rating company now. That's what they were, but for comic books.
Yeah, and so they just said, we're going to publish this comic. We're not going to put that on there so people know that they're going to be getting a much more adult, a much more serious-toned comic book. And then that's when the comic code, whatever I guess whatever the parent is of that, that's when they really started kind of looking into, okay, so maybe we need to start lifting some of these restrictions. We really need to start reformulating what it is that we approve, because it was such a well-received storyline that it really rewrote the whole comics.
I never realized how long this list of stuff was for like their authority, what they allowed and didn't allow.
Oh,
it almost sounds like that code is kind of like an ESRB rating.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
cool.
cool.
So it's right here and goes.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff in the
it's
50s
ridiculous.
or 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a different time.
It is a much different time. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Stan Lee is just. I think his talent. There's never going to be anything seen quite like what he was capable of. And say what you want about him, but his legacy is always going to be tied into comics. And I think the imagination that he had and that he was able to fill people with will literally outlast all of us.
Oh yeah.
Not even just that. Some of like the early morality, like his characters brought in. I mean, one that's kind of defaulted to by people now because of all the Spider-Man movies, but with great power comes great responsibility.
He coined that phrase.
Yeah.
That wasn't something that was just there, and it's one of those things where, and then if you look at, like...
Excelsior!
Even...
Yeah, he said Excelsior.
Even if you look at, like, DC Comics, the way, like, the Flash and stuff started being... They started embodying, like, that exact same mentality. So he didn't just have an effect on one side of the eye. He had an effect across the entire thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
But no, did, like, Stan Lee have, like, a artistic, like, influence of any sort? Because obviously the Kirby dots did.
I don't think so, because Stanley, I don't think he ever did any kind of artwork. He was always he was the writer, he was the plotter, and he always worked with a collaborator.
He was the idea man, usually.
He really was. He was the idea man, and he was the main writer. Fantastic Four, the flagship title that he really helped create. He was the writer of that for the first at least 100 issues of that series. And funny little note too is that one of the characters who he got really just interested with, and that he really came to really appreciate and like his creation was the Silver Surfer, actually, who first appeared in the pages of Fantastic Four number 48. But then when he had his own spin-off series in the 60s, they did a solo Silver Surfer series, and Stan Lee refused to let anybody else write dialogue for Silver Surfer because he had that much love for that character that he did not want to pass off the writing
that was his baby.
Yeah, of Silver Surfer to anybody else. He wanted to do the dialogue for him.
I see.
And actually, it's funny because what is known as the Galactus trilogy, which is Fantastic Four numbers 48, 49, and 50, that is still, it goes down as one of the best comic book stories ever told. And that is by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
And that's cool.
Yeah, so it's such a great storyline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Umbrella Chronicles. That was the name of that graphic novel book.
Yes,
that I really love that series.
Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba, I believe, do the Umbrella Chronicles. Yeah. Not to be confused with anything from Resident Evil, though. It's not the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Halfway through, zombies start shambling around.
Oh yeah, because I think I got that for you, and I'm just like, oh, Umbrella Chronicles. This looks really interesting. I wonder what it has to do with Resident Evil, and I'm paging through, and I'm like, this doesn't look like Resident Evil.
What was
something completely different?
Oh, what was the shooter that came out? Wasn't there like a? That was a shooter. Yeah, it was that first-person shooter.
Umbrella Chronicles?
I think it was called Umbrella Chronicles.
Yes, the Umbrella Chronicles.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah. It was fun. That's off topic.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go.
All right, so I do have another question. I'm gonna kind of rephrase it so Andy might be able to answer.
Gee, thanks for including me, guys.
Yeah.
Well, if you read comics, maybe you could be more a part of this conversation.
So, if you could have any form of like the symbiotic suit or like item from any comic line, what would you pick?
If you could have any suit.
So obviously like the symbiotes from Spider-Man, Witchblade or Darkness, Blue Beetle.
Oh, gotcha.
I suppose like World Mind would be one from Nova. Technically, I suppose you could say the Green Lantern rings and stuff like that. What would you pick? Obviously, you would probably be Green Lantern.
Probably. So if I could be any of them.
Yeah.
Well, goddamn it. That's a good question. Holy shit.
So,
technically, I would take the and I can't the Clintar. I would take the symbiote, the symbiotes from Spider-Man, just because I love Venom, but I love Carnage. I love him. I love Carnage because he is literally evil just for the sake of being evil, because he's like basically oh god, what is it that he says? It's like order is nothing more than an illusion. It's like basically like just spreading chaos is like that.
That's his purpose.
That's his purpose. It's just for spreading chaos, for killing people, just for killing people. I'm like, man, it's like he is. Oh God.
He's basically the exact opposite of what Paul is.
Yes, exactly.
Pretty much.
That's why he likes Carnage.
Because that's what I can. Because I can enjoy that. because it's not affecting my life, actually. Yeah.
So, Poe, what would you?
Yeah, I would probably do Green Lantern just to be able to create stuff with the rings and stuff. That should be really cool to me.
Using your willpower.
Oh, hell
to
yeah.
create, to create the projections and stuff.
You know what's sad though? Thinking about it, because don't a lot of the powers based on your personality and stuff, all I'd be able to create is penises. Seriously. That's all I create with the ring. It's just one big green dildo.
So
what the fuck?
So you can create whatever your mind is capable of thinking of. Son of a bitch, that's all you can make.
That's all I can make. I have the most useless power in the world. Guess what, evildoer? You just got mushroom stamps. Mushroom stamps. That'll stop you.
Oh, God.
Was that a hiccup in the middle of it?
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Guess what?
You just got mushroom
This is all going in, by the way.
God damn it.
I just got mushroom
What about you? What about you?
For me, I'd probably choose the darkness.
I don't know what
takes,
that is.
It takes like the best concepts of like the Spider-Man style symbiotes, but then it also takes it to a much further extreme. So you've probably seen images for Witchblade.
Yes.
So
She's a babe.
The darkness is the male equivalent of the Witchblade.
Oh, okay.
So like he has everything from like the like organic armor that will come on. He can sprout wings and fly if he needs to, but he can also summon creatures of dark. So he summons these little imps, the snakes and stuff like that, and he can basically do whatever he wants with darkness. Well, the downside is, bright light fucks him over early on and the stuff.
It's
but
kind of like vampires.
Well,
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's kind of like Dracula.
It's the same as the early symbiotes. You fucking fart loud enough in front of them, they're done.
Oh, well, the sound, they don't like the loud
Yeah, it's
sounds
just
and
any
stuff.
sound, heat. And so, like, basically anything early symbiotes, you could screw them up.
Symbiotes sound like bitches. Like, if they were in a city, they'd be destroyed.
And the worst thing is, they only get stronger with more hosts. So if you're the first host, if you don't have superpowers, yeah, they're going to make you better than you are, but you're not going to be that much
true,
strong.
because, Carnage is much more strong than,
And the only reason
than
Venom is strong as he is on Brock is because when he was
Brock
bonded,
is actually... Brock is strong.
But also because he stole Spider-Man's powers.
Oh, that's right. The Clintar stole it. Yeah, that's right.
Whatever creature they bonded with, they copy all of their abilities and bring it to all future hosts.
Oh,
so that's why
cool.
like Venom has the webbing and he has all the spider symbols and stuff like that. Is because he copied it from Spider-Man. So without any of the previous hosts, they're weak. Like they're stronger than humans, but they're still weak in comparison.
You know what a fun fact is about Venom, like Eddie Brock as Venom and Spider-Man, is that Todd McFarlane was doing the artwork for Amazing Spider-Man. He started in issue number 298 in 1987, I think it was. And he wanted to draw the red and blue Spider-Man. And unfortunately, Spider-Man at that point was in the black suit. And so he created an idea, like a storyline, to take the symbiote away from Spider-Man and put it onto somebody else so that he could return to
the iconic
to the iconic red and blue Spider-Man. And so he basically removed the symbiote that was on Spider-Man, put it into Eddie Brock, and so he got his red and blue Spider-Man back, and then it created a character, Venom, who ended up becoming more well recognized and well liked and well received than anybody could have ever even possibly imagined.
I mean, and look at the origin of him when they bought him from like a fan or something like that, from a contest.
That was the symbiote, the black suited Spider-Man. They actually did, they bought that idea.
And they bought it for like $300 or something like that.
$200.
Yeah, so it was from
that was Jim Shooter. And they even told the guy too, is like, we'll give you a chance to write a future issue of like a comic book, some kind of Marvel book, like your It may not have even just been a Marvel book. It may have been Spider-Man at the time, too.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, they bought the idea from him for $200, and it's so funny
Dude got the short end of the stick with that
well,
one.
and somebody posted a picture of it. I think maybe it was on Twitter. Or it just showed up online, but it was basically the guy was given a letter saying like, "Hey, just make sure to sign this," because it was the whole work for hire. And so basically, he gets the $200. He gets a chance at writing a comic book, but he relinquishes all rights because then Marvel owns the rights to that character because you are working for Marvel Comics.
Wow.
So,
yeah. And with the popularity that he got, and like look at him now with his own movie and stuff like that. So
which was very well received, much to the chagrin of the people who love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I guess there was an article about people were really hoping that the movie was going to fail because then it would have given Sony a reason to sell back Spider-Man or the rights to Spider-Man back to Disney so that they could then start including all of that.
Flopped.
Well,
they have too many other ones in the lineup.
It probably wouldn't, but because of how well received it was and the box office success that Venom was, it really is like it's
the one that they better not screw up is Mobius.
I don't think that they're going Morbius.
Sorry, Morbius. Sorry.
Yeah, you're thinking the artist Mobius.
Yeah, but
Morbius.
The Living Vampire, because he's one of the next ones they're putting out for a solo film.
Mm-hmm.
They better not screw him up, because he's...
Well, I think they're going in the right direction, taking Jared Leto as Morbius, because I think that he could very well play that character
He's an amazingly versatile actor.
He is, very much so.
The funny thing is, like, even though I don't like his rendition of Joker, he was still good at what he was given to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And he's good, but not great. He's a weird, like, he's a jack of all trades actor.
Kind of, yeah.
I'm not. How does that saying go? Damn it.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
There we go. Yeah.
But I think that he did a better job than what I expect out of Joaquin Phoenix. Have you seen that he's going to be the new Joker?
Okay, that's a topic we can't go into because I will just go off the wall.
That's bad casting.
Not only is Joaquin Phoenix sucks as an actor, I don't care what anyone says. Every movie he's in, he is absolutely 100% forgettable.
For the most part.
I don't even know who the hell you're talking about at this point.
Have you ever seen Gladiator?
No.
Have you seen Signs?
No.
No?
Probably know his brother River Phoenix, the one that died.
No. Walk the Line?
Nope.
Jesus.
Well, this may explain why I don't know who this is.
So,
What else has Joaquin Phoenix been in?
This guy. You've probably seen him as a background character and stuff.
Maybe, but he looks forgettable.
But like, okay, do you think? Look, so he was in. Let's see, Gladiator, Walk the Line, Signs.
So the only 3 movies he's ever been in, apparently.
No, The Village.
All the ones that we...
Wait, wasn't The Village that M. Night Shyamalan disaster?
Yeah.
Yep, there we go.
Yep, M. Night Shyamalan.
He was one of the main characters in that.
Yep, there it is.
Shyamalama Ding Dong.
So,
Shamalama Ding Dong.
So, like,
hey.
but like, you think of the movies he's in.
Nothing great.
Gladiator.
Yeah.
Fantastic movie. What do you remember about his character in that movie?
Nothing. Russell Crowe was in that movie.
Exactly.
And the score was by Hans Zimmer.
you know the score guy.
And that's my point, is like, he is a background supporting actor. Mm-hmm. It's like asking, what do you remember of J.K. Simmons doing other than like Law and Order?
Spider-Man?
That's it. That's all you're going to think of is those 2 roles.
No, he also
That man has hundreds of roles to his credit. You don't remember any of them.
No, J.K. Simmons was also in... what was that one with Kevin Costner? For Love of the Game. He was in For Love of the Game. Ha!
Also, we got 3.
I know that one.
Woo!
And it took him a while to think of it.
Go to hell!
I'm giving you both half points for that.
But like, he's an actor. He's got all these credits to his name. No one remembers shit about any of his roles.
Yeah. So let's make him a front-forward character like the Joker.
Okay, and then here, I will show you what he looks like as the Joker.
Oh, Lord, I don't know how to see it.
It's not the greatest.
Do you remember...
Well, while he's looking it up, I do want to circle back to something. So you had talked about that 3-issue series. You said it was probably one of the greatest.
Oh, the
stories.
Galactus trilogy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say was the greatest story written in like the DC world? Because I know Killing Joke is actually supposedly super good story.
Killing Joke is a really good story.
Yeah.
I know that in DC continuity, one of the usually people say Watchmen is probably one of the greatest stories that was ever told. What is it? The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller was actually a very well beloved storyline as well too. Personally, I don't know as much about like the big DC titles or the big
the one
crossovers.
You're forgetting, Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come, I loved.
Alex Ross.
I completely forgot about that. Alex Ross and Mark Waid.
Yeah,
actually,
that's probably one of the best ones.
I loved Kingdom Come.
Really?
It was basically an out of continuity story where it was basically it was told in the future where the superheroes like Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, they had all gotten old, and so they were going.
Why is it? You ever seen those pictures of like Green Lantern, but he's got like the giant sword and like the armor on?
Yeah.
That's from Kingdom Come.
That's from Kingdom
okay.
Come.
That's where he literally sits above the earth in like his own generated watchtower and just keeps an eye on everything.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, it was such a good story.
Oh, wow.
Such a good story. But honestly, one of the greatest crossovers I love is Blackest Night. I loved Blackest Night, and using people's like their emotions against them, and bringing back loved ones
Another
who
big
were
one?
already dead.
Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babel was another Mark Waid one too. Yeah.
So that's another good one.
Which
it basically shows you how screwed up Batman is.
Because at the end of Tower of Babel, it was basically they kicked Batman out of the Justice League because he was secretly building a dossier on each one of the members of the Justice League on how to beat them in case they ended up like going bad. Yeah, going bad or something like that. But none of them knew that he was doing that, and so basically they had lost complete trust in him and kicked him out of the Justice League.
Except for it's funny is I know it happens at the end of the animated movie based on it, but doesn't Superman still trust him after the end? He kicks him out of the Justice League saying, "You know why we have to do this?" But isn't that also where he gets some of the kryptonite from? Is Superman at the end of the story? To hold on to.
I can't remember if he ends up giving him some of the kryptonite, but I do know that it ends where they're all kind of in agreement that Batman has to go because he's too unpredictable, and he's too just like he's been doing this whole time without letting us know that he's doing it. Like, we can't trust him, and that's basically where it all ends. And I'm guessing that he ends up getting back into the Justice League at some point, But yeah, that was such a good storyline too.
Red Sun's another good one for Superman.
Yep. Superman Birthright.
Instead of landing in the middle of Kansas, he landed in Russia.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Actually, that's funny that you talk about that. That was a big thing I remember that people talked to Stan Lee about was the whole he had nothing to do with that.
No, he had nothing to
Never
do with
mind. For some reason, the whole Batman versus Superman thing, I thought somebody had talked to him or somebody about that. About how, like, who would win, Batman versus Superman? Like, who really wins that fight or whatever? And they're like...
Superman, hands down.
Well, no, I think the person they asked never gives an answer because they said, either way, you're pissing somebody off. He says they would rather leave it to the imagination of somebody, and no one can ever beat somebody else.
Yep, exactly.
Or something like that. And I feel like somebody posed that question to Stan Lee, but maybe it was somebody else.
I don't know.
But I remember that the whole Batman versus Superman thing, and it's like... Dude, Batman didn't even beat Superman. Like, wasn't who was it? Wasn't it
Martha?
Who is it in DC?
Why'd you say that name?
Is it Green Arrow? Isn't that DC? No.
Yeah, he's
didn't he shoot?
That's in Dark Knight Returns, where the one-armed Green Arrow used the kryptonite.
Yeah, the kryptonite arrows to take down Superman, so
and then
Batman could beat
Batman's
him.
in the armored suit, and he breaks in his face, and it drains Superman's powers for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think nobody has ever. It's like who would win, Batman versus Superman. I don't think they've never been definitive on who would win because, you're gonna alienate one side or the other, but.
I just say, I know in a number of outings, Batman has flat out beaten him, but I think Superman's also defeated him before, too.
Honestly, come on.
Every time Batman beats him, it's something stupid.
It's like
I got a gauntlet made out of kryptonite. I've got this and that. It's like, come on.
Yeah, kryptonite condoms.
I can fly into space and shoot you from there with my lasers.
Yeah, well, Superman is from Krypton, who they get their power from the frickin' yellow sun. Like, obviously, during the day, he gets stronger then.
Yeah.
And recharges. Like, come on. Ridiculous. Like, he can't lose unless you use kryptonite.
Yeah.
Which is where the term comes from, where it's like, oh, that's my kryptonite.
Yeah.
It's like, literally, that's my weakness.
Yeah.
So...
I will say, it's amazing how much comic books have really, like, influenced the world and our sayings and...
That's another big one, like, for DC would be Death and Return of Superman, because that affected a lot of stuff at the time.
Death and Return of... Well, the death of Superman...
Well, I should say Death and then the Superman... Reign of Superman. Right? That's the one with all, like, iron... John... John
Henry Steele.
There we go.
Or, John Henry... Irons.
There we go.
That's his name.
You had a medal in there somewhere.
so the death of Superman, I think, honestly, was really good.
Yes.
When they brought him back and the whole reign of the Supermen, it's a great idea in theory. It went on too long.
What was the?
It was basically you had 4 different people taking over the helm of Superman because Superman was pronounced dead. Well, not really pronounced dead, but he was dead for all intents and purposes. Doomsday had killed him. And
Cellophane S didn't save him.
Cellophane S.
It's from
the movie.
The Christopher Reeves movie.
Oh, gotcha.
Was it number 3 where he throws a weird S at him and it eats him up and you're like, what?
No, it's the one with Zod and stuff.
Oh, that was the first one.
It was.
That was the first one.
That'd be the first one.
Yeah.
When they're in the Fortress of Solitude.
So anyways, after his death, in order to take up the reign of Superman, so Superboy, Eradicator, the Man of Steel, who was literally steel, like he was made of steel.
He's a robot Superman.
And then Cyborg Superman. No, Cyborg was the robot, was the half.
Oh yeah, sorry, Cyborg.
And Cyborg was like, it was these 4 Supermen trying to take over the reign of his mantle. And while all of this was going on, it's like they ended up meeting one another, and then they found out that Cyborg was actually bad. And he was trying to do something, and so then they all kind of come together in order to stop Cyborg. And then near the end of it, Superman ends up coming back because what had happened was he wasn't necessarily dead. His heartbeat... He was
comatose.
He was comatose, yeah. His heartbeat had slowed down to the point to where it wasn't even registering, like, nothing would register, but it was still beating. So he never had actually died. And then he came back and he wiped the floor with Cyborg and he came back. But that actually brings up a tangent too, because that is that I was telling you about, the whole Speculator Bubble burst.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to get into.
And it almost destroyed the comic book industry. It literally single-handedly almost destroyed the entire comic book industry because everybody... news media outlets were starting to report on the death of Superman, that they were going to be killing this iconic character, and so people were going off in droves trying to buy as many issues as they could because they had found out that the first appearance of Superman
was worth a lot
of money. It was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is funny now because it's worth actually millions of dollars.
Jesus Christ.
But so they thought, okay, well, his first appearance is worth this much money. Well, I'm going to buy a whole bunch of his death issues because that's going to put my kids through college one day. And people didn't realize that in the world of comic books, nothing is final.
Yeah.
If you kill a character, guess what? You can bring them back just as easily. They don't stay dead. And what they also didn't understand is that supply and demand. Why is Action Comics #1 worth so much money? Because it came out in the 1930s, and there is just not as many copies of that.
Yeah.
And during the whole World War II, people were donating their comic books for paper for the war. And so a lot of comic books got destroyed back then because they were basically disposable entertainment where you read the comic book.
Yeah, all pulp comics were.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the name comes from, is they were made from cheap
Right.
pulp
Yeah.
paper.
You
That's why they
literally-
were pulp comics.
You literally read the comic book, and you didn't keep the comic book because you thought it was a collectible. You literally either threw it away
with
or
the newspapers.
yeah,
usually.
with the newspapers or whatever it
They'd
was.
go
You
in
just,
the bin and
yeah,
they'd get
you just
recycled.
got rid of it. And so-
Imagine if like video games were like that. I play
Yeah.
it once, it's done.
yeah,
It's called GameStop.
You get $3.
and so that's why that issue was so expensive. And then now with it ended up being Superman number 75, which was Superman Volume 2 number 75. That was going to be the Death of Superman. Well, they knew that this was going to be a hot issue, and so DC printed a lot of copies of it. And so yes, everybody got 3, 4, 5, 10 copies, whatever it was. Well, supply and demand, okay, people aren't demanding it if the supply is really high up, because everybody who wanted one is going to get one.
Right.
And everybody who is trying to sell one for an exorbitant amount of price is like, well, I'm not going to buy it because I
Why?
already got
Go-
my own.
yeah,
I
go
already
buy
got
it.
my own copy. and so everybody started kind of like buying this thing up, thinking, okay, it's going to be worth a lot of money. And then they brought back Superman, and it's like,
Oh my god.
oh crap, what, like. And at this point too, a lot of speculators were buying up comics from like Image Comics, like Spawn #1, Youngblood #1, thinking that now this is not just so much as like entertainment value. This is an investment, and so people started buying it as investments. X-Men #1, when they relaunched it in 1991, that sold 8 million copies. That is unheard of in today's like industry. The average comic sells like, and if it's a really popular one, it's gonna sell maybe 400,000 or 500,000 copies. That's
Yeah.
it. This comic sold 8 million copies.
Jesus Christ.
X-Force #1 in 1991 sold 5 million copies. That is unheard of in today's industry.
Wow.
And so everybody was buying these thinking, oh, it's a #1. I'm going to be able to sell this thing for $500,000 one day. Not when there's 5 billion copies of it out there. And so then everybody thought, well, okay, they can bring back heroes whenever they want, so that doesn't make this issue any, like, it doesn't make it special. There's 1 million copies of this one out there, doesn't make that special. And so people just basically stopped buying comics for the investment factor.
Right.
And the comic book industry, like Marvel and DC, were used to printing off, like,
Right.
1 million copies, 800,000 copies of a comic, and when you stopped getting those speculators buying the comics, it literally meant that an issue that they printed off 800,000 copies, it only sold 200,000 copies or 300,000
Now you have
copies.
all those dead copies.
And so you have all those dead copies, which then the comic book stores that were buying these, they couldn't just return them to the distributor at that time. They had to eat up that cost, and so a lot of stores literally went out of business during that time because they weren't selling the copies, and so therefore
The ones that didn't tended to branch into other stuff too. Hence why like our local comic shop, Rockheads, does games and like Warhammer, all that sort of stuff, because comics alone is not, while it's a great industry, is not enough to sustain stuff.
Not quite lucrative enough. Wow.
So like here's according to this list this from Comic Run, in October, the highest estimated selling, 107,578 comics, and that was for a Batman issue.
107,000.
That's it. That's the
Oh
highest
my
grossing
God.
for all of October.
And
in
those
all
ones,
of October.
For this
those
year.
ones were doing
In
millions.
1991,
Jesus Christ.
X-Men #1, when they relaunched their new #1, it
Do you remember what
sold.
month that was? Roughly?
Oh shoot!
He ain't that good.
No, I'm not that good. Maybe March. I'm not 100%
That's
sure.
crazy to think about.
It
though.
sold 8 million copies.
That's almost like the whole ET debacle with Atari, where that was just overzealousness.
Oh, that was literally overzealousness, and they were stupid.
Yeah.
So, okay. This is as far back as I can go. Oh, let me double check what the date was on that. So, April of 1993.
Oh,
And so, The number one for that was an Adventures of Superman, sold 3,454,000 copies.
Holy shit! 3 million copies.
But see, I also don't know if this is counting with current stuff, digital sales.
Yeah, I was about to say the only thing that
I don't think it is. Back in 1993.
No. For October of this
gotcha.
year.
I honestly, I don't think so. Just because
I think this is just physical sales.
I think it's just physical, but also too, I don't know if they necessarily count digital in there because it's like the comic book stores are not losing money on digitals. Well, in a sense, they're not. But people who buy it, it's like it's not taking money away from the comic book stores. Like they're not eating that loss, basically.
Right. That was one thing I was thinking of too when you had said that number of only 107,000. It's like, well, nowadays you have a lot more access to these things. Mm-hmm. Like we had talked about earlier, it's not the only place you can find this is at the comic book store. It's like now you can find it everywhere.
You do, but there was also DC had released an issue, like a comic book that was like a 3 different stories, but they also released it for 25 cents. And so and it was to kind of like it was almost like a preview of things that were going to be coming out in the coming year, and it made it made like kind of news headlines in like the comic book industry because that comic had sold over 1 million copies, and it was literally like the first time in like 15-20 years that a comic has sold over 1 million copies.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
just something that just does not happen anymore, but it was happening so regularly. And Image, one of their biggest claims to fame is that when they first started, they thought as a third party company, because you couldn't go against the big 1 and 2, Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
Image Comics had put out 7 comics for like 1 month. Their sales were like they literally sold more than DC Comics from just their 7.
Wow.
Like literally for that month they were number 2.
So if you actually look at this, I found a listing. So that little box there tells you the sales. But you got to remember that issue also had multiple covers. So
it did.
Each of them, each cover sold over 1 million copies.
Exactly.
Jesus.
But comic books nowadays do that too, where there are multiple. There's multiple.
They're the variants, the silver covers and stuff like that.
Well, not necessarily silver, but
the ones that are like the solid colors and stuff. I've seen for some of them.
Yeah, but some of them have variant covers and multiple covers, but they're not selling quite like they used to back then.
So that's
That's crazy.
So that was the whole speculator bubble where people were buying comics thinking that it was an investment piece, not realizing that by saturating the market for these things, then Marvel was over-publishing them, and so it literally took away all demand, and the industry literally imploded on itself because of the speculators, and it nearly bankrupted like comics just in general. In fact, Marvel Comics filed for bankruptcy in 1996, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is actually when they started they sold the rights to the movies and stuff.
Yes, it was. That was when they started.
That's how they stayed alive.
Tried to stay afloat.
That's how they sold the rights to Blade, the X-Men, Fantastic Four.
X-Men went to Fox,
and Spider-Man.
Fantastic Four went to Fox, Spider-Man went to Sony. Yep.
Blade, who did Blade?
Oh, shoot. It wasn't Fox or it wasn't Sony.
It's the one with the film and then it goes over...
New Line. New Line Cinema.
It was New Line,
I think it was New Line, yeah. So, yeah. So, but yeah, Marvel had to...
That's how they saved themselves.
Their movie
and that's why they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Because, other than... Obviously, they're going to be getting the Fox stuff back pretty soon. Yeah. Once that deal's finally finished.
Yep.
But so at that point, they'll only be missing the Spider-Man universe.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yep. So they sold themselves off, and now they're just piecing themselves back together.
But that's because with Disney owning them now too, they're a huge international company now.
Well, does Disney not own anything?
Yeah.
That's
pretty
much...
DC used to be DC was the first one where DC always was going to be around because they were owned by Warner Brothers. So they had a big backing in Warner Brothers, and now Marvel finally has that backing because Marvel used to be its own entity, and now it's got the backing of Disney, so it's really kind of very similar to what DC is. So,
wow, crazy. It won't be long until we're seeing Marvel stuff in Kingdom Hearts.
To be honest, I was hoping
I
for
wouldn't
it,
doubt
but
it.
It's ridiculous. You're already. I'm still waiting for the Star Wars stuff in fucking Kingdom Hearts.
Actually, wasn't I thought they were supposed to be for one of the new ones.
I don't know, man. But I think that'll do it for this episode. We're running at damn near 2 hours.
Well, some
maybe
of it's kind of
maybe hour 45. But thank you, Stanley. You brought comics into damn near everything. Like you said, it's comic books are a facet of everyone's life, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
It goes into our sayings. It goes into stories we tell. I mean, he pretty much not created, but he definitely solidified the industry.
Stan Lee honestly created an entire universe of superheroes and super beings and just a way of thinking that, like I said, the amount of inspiration that he was able to provide through his imagination is going to outlive every single one of us.
Oh yeah.
The amount of imagination that he has provided to other people who then can carry on that legacy and can carry on the legend. He's always going to be a part of all of us, and I'm so glad that I was able to meet him 6 years ago, actually, at a comic book convention. I was able to meet him and get some autographs. And
another thing you and I weren't invited to.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I would have
gone anyways.
I would have had no interest.
Yeah. And so it was. I'm so glad that I had a chance to meet him, and just so glad that he did what he did, and against all odds. And this is actually one thing that I am most thankful for, is that he did something that, even though he knew it in his heart that he was meant to follow it, even though people kind of downplayed the importance of comic books and thought it was just children's stuff. He knew that that's what he was meant to do, and he made it so that it transcended that age gap, and it became just so ingrained in pop culture, in our culture, in our history, that now nobody can really deny the power of comic books and the power to tell an impactful story in that medium.
I'd say a lot of that's due to the fact that he hit the minds of us, like our generation.
Yeah.
So he actually got to see the fruits of all that work from when we were children. Now we're the current generation.
Well, actually,
and we've popularized
Even before that,
It'd be
even
our
before
parents'
our
generation.
parents' generation. Yeah.
And I mean, he got to see like the fruits of all his labor.
Yeah.
And one thing that that was really interesting to me, or not interesting, but it's something that made me think about it. He was known for doing a cameo appearance in damn near, almost a lot of the Marvel movies, right?
He actually
almost all of them.
He has enough stored. Like, they've filmed a whole ton of cameos.
They did.
They still have some that they've never even used.
Yeah, he's
so
gonna
for
be
years to come, they're saying they still have enough cameos filmed.
He's gonna
Really?
be he's gonna be in movies for the next couple of years, because unfortunately, they recorded a whole bunch of cameos because, I mean, they knew that his time may be limited, so they didn't want to take the risk, so they ended up filming a bunch of cameos back to back to back so that he would still continue to be in movies.
How would they film cameos for him in movies that aren't even around yet?
Well, because they can just film some small offside scene of him saying, or reacting to something, and then place it wherever they want in anything.
I suppose.
Yep.
But the post I'd seen was on Facebook, and it said the next time you go to a Marvel movie and you don't see him in it, you're gonna start to cry because it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hit you harder than you realize at that point that he's not around anymore, and that his cameo will not be in future movies going forward.
And honestly, when I found out the news that he had passed away, it almost felt like I lost a grandparent again. Like, it's just I never realized he had such an impact on my life that I never thought, like, I knew the time would come soon, but I just never knew that, like, even when I was expecting it, it hurt that much to lose him.
Well,
so rest in peace, Stanley. 1922 to 2018.
What a life.
95 years old.
95. Well, Shoot us up with some comments about your experiences with the comic book world. What are your favorite heroes? What are your favorite villains? What are storylines you love? What are storylines you absolutely despise?
One more day.
Batman. Just whatever. Just hit us up on Facebook.
Hit us up on Twitter.
Go to powertripgaming.tv. It takes you directly to the YouTube channel where you can watch Paul and I tackle the NES collection.
And side quest episodes where we tackle games outside of the NES, like the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis.
There you go. This has been the Power Trip Gaming Powercast.
Now you're listening with power.
Excelsior, man.
Excelsior and Godspeed, Stanley.